Alright, so here's a quick video on a Roots rotary blower and getting the lobes timed. So I've got one of these trailers here that I use for a hydrovac, and the hydrovacs generate vacuum with a supercharger, essentially, a Roots style blower. And the one that's on mine happens to be a 4.7 URAI DSL, which is a dual splash, so it's got oil on both sides of it. And I guess the guy that was in there before loaded it down with the cheapest parts. It's got Chinese bearings, and you know, they're rough, and it started to make some metally noises and stuff. So I figured, hey, it's time. So it's swapping the bearings out and everything. Easy enough. There's actually a video on the internet of a guy doing that. I think he's out in California, maybe some cleaning company, and super amazing video. If you just search Roots URAI blower, he's going to be the first dude that comes up because he's awesome, and it was super great. But I got it all back together, and the real problem on this model is the straight gears. It's very difficult to keep everything in alignment in here when you try and tighten these gears down, because they're not keyed, they're on a tapered shaft, right? So when you start applying real torque to this to tighten it down, and I don't know what the torque spec is, but I know if it was a motor on a tapered shaft, it'd be like 115 foot-pounds. So that's what I'm going to go for. But long before you get there, when you start tightening it down, what happens is you think you've got these kind of in orientation, because the way it works, it's really fancy stuff. But the way it works is they're 90 degrees to each other. They're like a dog bone shape, and they slide in and out of each other. I should have made a video on the whole thing, but it doesn't matter. Getting it timed has been a royal pain in the bum. So I'm going to tell you, maybe I can save you some time. I don't know. Maybe this is the absolute wrong way to do it, but excuse me. I'll tell you what I did. So I got the cheap Chinese bearings out, replaced them with quality SKF and NSK for the really fancy roller bearing that's in there, which is the one where your drive pulley goes on because it needs better support laterally. And I tried to time this thing a bunch of times, and it kept jamming up and jamming up and jamming up, and I couldn't get it to go. So when you rotate this, so I got the gears towards me. When you rotate this, you're going to see that there's like a wiper on here, right? And so to make sure that this is at 90 degrees, what I did, just so I could see it better, is scribe a black line down the side here. Now we can kind of see, and I actually labeled B on one side, and I've got an A on the 180 degree side, just to make it easy to see. And I've been using feeler gauges at various parts, but we'll get there in a sec. So you bring this wiper all the way back until you can just see the black line that you just put on, like that. And now we know this guy is straight up and down like this, right? He's at like 90 degrees to this one. And it's coincidentally, you can see the key shaft on this is pointing straight up. And that's the way these are kind of put together. And if we wiggle this, of course, I've already reassembled and got the first torque, and this took me 2 days to figure out. So this is why I'm posting this. Whether you find it useful, well, that's up to you. But what I finally ended up doing was I scribe a line on there so I can just see it. You bring it back to there, and then these won't be tight yet. I still have a final tightening to do on these. They're like 80 pounds or so, but we're going to bring them up. And you can wiggle this, and you'll be able to wiggle this lobe back and forth. And you'll hear it clunk when it goes one way and clunk when it goes one way, because they're not geared together yet. So I had a hard time figuring out what the right number was. And I looked up some other generic ones. And I think I was using way too small a gap. And so the tolerances on this are probably a little bit wider. But what I ended up doing was I just measured the height of this wiper that's on here. And it appears to be, I mean, it's pretty hard to get a measurement. But it appears to be somewhere between 18 and 22 thou in the old Freedom units there. So what I did was I decided that my feeler gauge set was going to be sacrificial. I set it to 20. The 20 is actually too thick to bend nicely, so I've got a 12 and an 8 there. You just wedge it in between the lobes. Guess I got a little out of alignment when I tightened it down the first time. And this is what happens. This is, like I said, this has been days on this. Let's see if the 20 fits on the other side. Is this a two-handed operation? Is that what's going to happen? All right. Yes. Okay. So I'm just going to wedge that in there. Like that. And so what happens is when you're tightening this, whoops, when you're tightening that before this is firmly seated on the shaft, is you'll just turn the shaft and the gear will stay locked in place with the other one. And then you're out of timing. And that is aggravating, as you can imagine. So, I settled on this. Here we go. Black line. And I gotta take my, I don't know if I have enough hands for this. So I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. Black line is on there where you can just barely see it. I'm gonna wedge my, in this case, it's 20 thou because I measured that wiper surface right there because these things are really fine tolerance. And I am going to wedge a 20 thou feeler in between the two lobes there. And then I've been tinkering with different ways on how to lock these gears together because I don't have a tool for that. Look at this. This is pulling everything out. So, what I finally settled on was I've got a set of these cheap picks, and they're super soft. Like, they are super soft iron. And so, and they're really fine taper, so you can kind of cram them anywhere. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to lock these together. And I know there's people that are probably going to be screaming, oh, you can't do that. You'll break your gear. You'll do whatever. Well, you know what? I'm pretty much at the end of my ability on this project. It's been going on for a while. So I'm just going to wedge that in there like that. And then it's way, way, way softer than these gears. These gears are super quality metal. And then I'm going to take my feeler gauge, just because you do not want to tighten anything without these things in place. I have to put the phone down just for a sec so I can wedge that in there. Alright, so now I got my feeler gauge at 20 thou wedged in there. I've got my two very soft ductile pins wedging the gears together. And I've already tighten these down as kind of as tight as I can go just by hand without an extension on my ratchet. So now I've got my torque wrench dialed into 115 and hopefully nothing here moves. But anyway, I bet you even with this it's not going to work and it'll be bound up and I'll have to do this over again because I stopped in the middle and I did a bunch of stuff. What? Whoops. Whoops. See? Haha. And now I have to fish my feeler gauge out of there, which is in there somewhere. Okay.